How to become emotionally available to yourself. Emotional availability to yourself is the foundation of every healthy relationship you will ever have. Yet it is one of the most misunderstood and least practiced skills. Many people believe emotional availability means being open, expressive, or vulnerable with others. But true emotional availability begins inward. It is the ability to stay present with your own inner world without abandoning, suppressing, or outsourcing yourself. When you are not emotionally available to yourself, you may still function well on the surface. You may be productive, insightful, and self-aware. But internally, your emotions are either managed, minimized, intellectualized, or overridden. You move through life responding to others while remaining disconnected from your own signals. Becoming emotionally available to yourself means learning to relate to your emotions as information rather than problems. It means staying with what you feel instead of escaping it. And for many people, this feels unsafe at first because emotional unavailability often developed as a survival strategy. Most emotional unavailability is learned early. If, as a child, your emotions were ignored, dismissed, shamed, or overwhelmed others, you likely learned to disconnect from them. You may have been told you were too sensitive, too dramatic, or too needy. Or you may have had caregivers who were emotionally unavailable themselves, leaving you to self-soothe before you were developmentally ready. In those environments, your nervous system adapted. You learned to suppress feelings to maintain connection. You learned to stay functional rather than felt. Over time, this created an internal split. One part of you learned how to perform and cope. Another part learned that its feelings were unsafe, unwanted, or burdensome. As an adult, this split shows up in subtle ways. You may struggle to identify what you feel in real time. You may rationalize pain instead of feeling it. You may stay in situations that don't meet your needs because you're disconnected from your internal signals. You may seek emotionally unavailable partners because they mirror your relationship with yourself. Emotional availability to yourself begins with awareness, but it does not end there. Many people understand their patterns intellectually, but remain emotionally unavailable. Insight alone does not create safety. Availability is built through repeated experiences of staying present with yourself during discomfort. The first step is learning to slow down your internal responses. Emotional unavailability often moves fast. You feel something and immediately distract, analyze, self-criticize, or act. Becoming available means pausing. It means noticing sensations in your body without trying to change them. Tightness in the chest, heaviness in the stomach, shallow breathing. These are not obstacles. They are communication. Your body speaks before your mind understands. Emotional availability requires listening to the body instead of overriding it. This means allowing sensations to exist without judgment. You don't need to label them perfectly. You don't need to fix them. You only need to stay. For many people, staying with emotion triggers fear. Fear of being overwhelmed, fear of losing control, fear of falling apart. These fears come from earlier experiences where emotions were not supported. But as an adult, you now have more capacity than your nervous system realizes. Emotional availability teaches your system that feelings rise and fall. They are waves, not threats. Another key aspect of emotional availability is self-validation. When you are unavailable to yourself, you look outside for confirmation that your feelings make sense. You doubt your reactions. You ask whether you're overreacting. You minimize your experience to maintain peace. Becoming emotionally available means learning to say internally, "This makes sense." Not because it's perfect or logical, but because it's yours. Validation does not mean agreement with every impulse. It means acknowledging reality without denial. This is especially important for emotions like anger, grief, jealousy, and sadness. These emotions are often suppressed because they were unsafe to express early on. When they arise, you may feel ashamed or want to get rid of them quickly. Emotional availability asks you to stay curious instead. What is this emotion protecting? What boundary or need is it pointing to? Anger often signals a violation or unmet boundary. Sadness often signals loss. Anxiety often signals fear of disconnection or lack of safety. When you ignore these messages, you disconnect from yourself. When you listen, you build trust. Trust with yourself is essential. Emotional unavailability often includes self-betrayal. You override your needs to keep relationships. You ignore your intuition to avoid discomfort. You stay silent to avoid conflict. Each time you do this, a part of you learns that you are not reliable. Becoming emotionally available means rebuilding this trust. It means following through on your own signals in small ways. Resting when you're tired. Saying no when something feels wrong. Leaving situations that consistently harm you. You don't need to do this perfectly. Consistency matters more than intensity. Another layer of emotional availability is emotional containment. This means allowing emotions without becoming them. Many people fear availability because they believe it means drowning in feelings. But availability is not collapse. It is presence with structure. Containment means you can feel deeply while staying grounded. You can experience sadness without losing yourself in it. You can feel fear without letting it dictate your actions. This is developed through regulation practices, but also through relationship with yourself. When you stay with emotion and it passes, your system learns resilience. Emotional availability also involves grieving. There are losses that can only be processed when you stop avoiding yourself. Loss of the relationships you hoped would work. Loss of the version of yourself that overgave. Loss of childhood safety that never existed. Grief requires presence. You cannot rush it or bypass it without staying disconnected. As you become emotionally available, your relationships change. You become less tolerant of inconsistency. You stop chasing validation. You recognize when someone cannot meet you emotionally because you are meeting yourself. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you grounded. You may notice that emotionally unavailable partners feel less attractive. Chaos becomes less stimulating. Calm becomes less boring. This is not because your emotions are gone, but because your nervous system no longer equates intensity with connection. Becoming emotionally available also means allowing joy. Many people suppress positive emotions as much as painful ones. If joy once felt fleeting or unsafe, you may unconsciously limit it. Availability means letting good moments land, letting pleasure be felt, letting connection register. This process takes time. Emotional availability is not a mindset shift. It is a relationship you build with yourself through repetition, through choosing presence over avoidance, through listening instead of dismissing, through staying instead of abandoning. There will be moments when you fall back into old patterns. This is not failure. It is information. Each time you notice it, you are already more available than before. Ultimately, emotional availability to yourself creates internal safety. And when you are safe with yourself, you stop asking others to provide what you are unwilling to give inwardly. Relationships stop being about regulation and start being about connection. You don't become emotionally available to be better for others. You become emotionally available so you no longer disappear from your own life. And from that place, love becomes something you share, not something you chase.